Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are here to continue our discussion and study of the Law of One. And I apologize for the bit of gap between the last video and this video. For all five of you watching this, I um, I felt a lot of relief, really, just to get the first five videos out, because I think just an understanding of those first five videos alone can take an individual a very long way, or at least um, we're kind of reading the rules of the game, and we're sort of learning about the game, and now we're getting into how to play the game of life well, and understanding the dynamics of what it would mean to heal and balance ourselves in mind, body, and spirit. And I got a bit sick after that last video went out, and then my parents came into town. I got a new modular for my modular thing in the background there, which is how I make music. And I spent most of my free time just exploring that. And I love doing that. And it's really, I've chosen to make music through that as a way of just making better breathwork experiences, really. So I've just been practicing that. And anyway, we're back. And I was going to get into the chakras next, but I realized that first we should talk about the basic principles of healing. This video specifically is about self-healing. And if we understand these basic principles, then the discussion of the healing and balancing of the chakras, um, it gives more depth and understanding to that process. So this one is particularly about self-healing, working within the self, looking at the mind, looking at the body, looking at the spirit, what it would mean to heal the mind, what it means to heal the body, what it means to heal and balance and activate the spirit. Now, again, this is self-healing. This can be done with a healer, and I'll make a separate video on that because I think it's its own thing. If a person is desiring to be a healer or to receive quote unquote healing from another healer, we'll find out later that the healer does not heal. People heal themselves. A healer acts only as a catalyst for a self-healing experience for another soul. So in any case, this is about healing of mind, body, and spirit through self-healing. Okay, so let's get right into it here. And the sort of how can I say, the intro to this would be early on. Don was asking, how does someone heal themselves? And he was asking about healing, healers. What does a healer do? How does someone heal themselves? And so Don basically said, we're ready. We would like to accept the honor, duty, responsibility of learning about healing. And Ra would not talk about this until Don said specifically that we would like to learn this and know about this. So that's just the initial sort of prehistory to these specific quotes. Okay. Okay. First quote. Don asks, "Can you state the law of one and the laws of healing to me?" Ra says, "I am Ra. The law of one, though beyond the limitations of name, as you call vibratory sound complexes, may be approximated by stating that all things are one, that there is no polarity, no right or wrong, no disharmony, but only identity. All is one, and that one is love light, light love, the infinite creator." We've heard this quote before. It was in one of the earlier videos. Essentially, again, the law of one simply states that all things are one. There is no disconnection between anything. One of the primal distortions of the law of one is that of healing. Healing occurs when a mind body spirit complex, that's us, human being, realizes deep within itself the law of one. Healing occurs when a mind body spirit complex realizes deep within itself the law of one. That is, that there is no disharmony, no imperfection, that all is complete and whole and perfect. Thus, the intelligent infinity within this mind body spirit complex reforms the illusion of body, mind, or spirit to a form more congruent with the law of one. The healer acts as energizer or catalyst for this completely individual process. Okay, so healing occurs within the self. It can only be done for the self by the self. And Ra makes this clear over and over again. The reason I mentioned the discussion, the sort of pre-discussion to this, is because Ra says at the end here, the healer acts as an energizer or catalyst for this completely individual process. Now, one doesn't necessarily need a healer, but it certainly is helpful to have people to guide us through the many stages of the process of self-healing. If you're walking a path and you come across somebody who's done it before or who has been further than you, they can tell you what comes next, what you might be expecting further up the path, right? Further along that path. Okay, so how do we heal ourselves? Uh, Next quote. Ra says, firstly, the mind must be known to itself. This is perhaps the most demanding part of healing work. If the mind knows itself, then the most important aspect of healing has occurred, for consciousness is the microcosm of the law of one. The second part has to do with the disciplines of the body complexes. In the energy instreamings reaching your planet at this time, these understandings and disciplines have to do with the balance between love and wisdom in the use of the body in its natural functions. The third area is the spiritual, and in this area, the first two disciplines are connected through the attainment of contact with intelligent infinity. Intelligent infinity being the one infinite creator, pure, undistorted, universal energy or universal healing energy. Okay? Next, know then first the mind and the body. Then, as the spirit is integrated and synthesized, those are harmonized into a mind body spirit complex which can move among the dimensions and which can open the gateway to intelligent infinity, thus healing self by light and sharing that light with others. True healing is simply the radiance of the self, causing an environment in which a catalyst may occur which initiates the recognition of self by self of the self-healing properties of the self. That last bit is one of my favorite quotes from the entire material, and I attempt to keep it in mind all the time. True healing is simply the radiance of the self, causing an environment in which a catalyst may occur, which initiates the recognition of self by self of the self healing properties of the self. And I can, in my own experience, sort of my first awakening experience, or my first experience of kind of feeling spirit, having an experience of something beyond what I already knew that didn't involve external substances like psychedelics, let's say. It occurred because my soul was desperate to sort of wake up again and remember that which needed to be remembered so that I could do what I came here to do. So I thought about this when I read this afterwards, and I thought, yeah, the radiance of my soul caused an environment, the environment being me going to the yoga studio, the healing center where I first practiced meditation and breath work. And those experiences caused within me a recognition of the ability that I could heal myself, that through um, certain mental processes, certain physical patterns of behavior, and through certain intentions and motivations, that I could heal and become a more balanced version of myself, a happier, more fulfilled, more loving, more wise version of myself. So this is good to keep in mind. I think sometimes healing, the need for healing, we're not always conscious of it. I would say, I would argue maybe that most of the time we're not conscious of it. And so we can find ourselves in the situations and in the spaces with the people that the soul kind of needs in order for us to hopefully wake back up. Good. Okay, so quick recap here. First, we deal with the mind. Second, we deal with body. Third, we deal with spirit. Okay. And I feel that there's a big misapprehension and misconception among the modern sort of spiritual practitioners, and that is that through physical movement alone, you're somehow going to heal yourself or become enlightened. Through repeated physical ritualistic actions and movements, that alone is going to help you to fully reach unlimited perception, aka contact with the infinite creator or contact with true nature. And if we look at this, Ra is saying that cannot be so. The mind has its own work that needs to be done within the mind. The body has its own work that needs to be done through the body, of course, which is perceived through the mind. And then the spirit is a blending of a balanced, relatively healed, perceptive, clearly perceptive, wise and compassionate mind with a well functioning body. Okay. So mental work is mental work. And I think a lot of people avoid the mental work because it is arguably the most painful and troubling of the healing process, because the mind contains all kinds of things that we'd rather not acknowledge. And what I've seen many people doing, because I did it for many years, is that I was using, you know, super disciplined physical practices, thinking that it was just going to magically clear everything in my mind up. But I kept doing those things, and certain mental thoughts and emotional patterns and distorted, whatever, all kinds of distortions within the mind remained. And that's because I thought I was avoiding the mental work by diving super deep into body disciplines. So that needs to be considered for people for sure who are truly trying to accomplish self healing. Are the things that I'm doing truly being done with the intention of knowing all parts of myself better and balancing all aspects of myself? Or are some of the things that I'm doing being done in an attempt to escape and run away from some other part of the work? So this is very subtle, but it bears mentioning. Okay. Okay, continuing. Training of the mind. First and foremost, the mind. Don asks, or Don says, we have decided to accept the honor duty of learning, teaching the healing process. I would ask as to the first step, which we should accomplish in becoming effective healers. Ra says, I am Ra. We shall begin with the first of the three teachings learnings. We begin with the training of mind necessary for contact with intelligent infinity. The prerequisite of mental work is the ability to retain silence of self at a steady state when required by the self. The mind must be open like a door. The key is silence. Within the door lies an hierarchical construction you may liken unto geography, and in some ways geometry, for the hierarchy is quite regular, bearing inner relationships. To begin to master the concept of mental discipline, it is necessary to examine the self. The polarity of your dimension must be internalized. Where you find patience within your mind, you must consciously find the corresponding impatience and vice versa. Each thought that a being has in its turn an antithesis. The disciplines of the mind involve, first of all, identifying both those things of which you approve and those things of which you disapprove within yourself, and then balancing each and every positive and negative charge with its equal. The mind contains all things. Therefore, you must discover this completeness within yourself. And so, just this first part of this quote alone is really heavy. There are some very intense considerations here. So first of all, I'll just go back to the prerequisite of mental work is the ability to retain silence of self at a steady state when required by the self. The mind must be open like a door. The key is silence. So we have to be able to focus on the task at hand, and this just takes practice. If my daily intention is I seek to know in order to serve. I seek to know myself better today than I did yesterday, so that through my increased self knowledge, I might be of better service to others. That's all I'm trying to do. And I think setting an intention or having a particular focus for the day allows perception to filter through that intention, that desire. So it's just a matter of focusing of attention. And for sure, that's becoming harder and harder nowadays because we're under constant electronic stimulation, and we're scrolling all the time or clicking all the time. It's very easy to get sidetracked, and that's just a matter of attention. So of course, meditation, things like yoga, meditation, eating well, sleeping well, these all allow the mental work to be done more easily because you'll have more energy, you'll have a more clear mind, right? So Each person has to figure out what practices for them allow the mind to relax and allow the mind to focus on looking at itself, mind looking at mind. Okay. Now, this next part, to begin to master the concept of mental discipline, it is necessary to examine the self. The polarity of your dimension must be internalized. What Ra is saying here is that there's polarization here at work, right? On this planet, there are positive qualities, positive behaviors, positive intentions, and there are the inverse of those, which are negative. Okay, we're on a polarized planet, and we're here in third density form. On this planet as humans to polarize. That's what we're here to do. So the concept of polarity has to be accepted. Next, it has to be accepted that the mind contains all things. Okay, therefore you must discover this completeness within yourself. So the work here is to, when we see ourselves being impatient, attempt to go, oh, okay, there's impatience showing up in me. I could be patient right now because patience exists in here too, right? Or I'm afraid right now, right? I'm afraid of something. Okay, I accept this part of the polarity of where I'm at. It's a negative expression. It's constricting. It's let's say it's a shrinking kind of energy, fear, right? Or I could be accepting of what is without fear, just accepting what's going on, loving it and accepting it, right? So it's the ability to watch the mind and to not resist um, any reaction to anything. You let the natural reaction rise up, you view it, you accept it, and then you look for the inverse of that. Okay. Um, Next, just this thing, the mind contains all things. We don't want to think about the idea that the mind contains all things. We like to think of ourselves as good people, morally virtuous, morally superior, spiritually superior in whatever kind of way. But everything's in there. And until we acknowledge that there is deep, deep darkness um, lurking within the mind, we're just pretending. And so I pretended for many years, and so I can kind of um, speak to that process. It's very, very difficult work looking at the mind because it's not fun most of the time. So people avoid it, and then they run to quote unquote spiritual things that just make them feel good about themselves. So we have to be careful. And if we're doing that, of course, we accept that that's what we're doing, and then attempt to make a change to a more balanced approach. Good. The second mental discipline is acceptance of the completeness within your consciousness. It is not for a being of polarity in the physical consciousness to pick and choose among attributes, thus building the roles that cause blockages and confusion in the already distorted mind complex. Each acceptance smooths part of the many blockages that self-judgment creates. This is what I was just saying. It's way too easy for us to start picking and choosing what we like and avoiding the things that we don't like. And so, what Ra is saying here is that this is not a wise approach. If you're going to judge yourself for having particular thoughts or particular desires, particular emotions, particular feelings, particular behaviors, you're just creating blockages in a mind that's already limited in its perception, and it will limit your perception more. So we have to just accept all parts of ourselves. And we'll learn when we get into the chakras that acceptance is related to the heart. It's an accepting place, it's a forgiving place. It's where we have compassion for ourselves, then with others, right? So you'll see that within these concepts are workings within the chakras, okay? So keep this in mind. The third discipline of the mind is a repetition of the first, but with the gaze outward towards the fellow souls that one meets. In each entity, there exists completeness. Thus, the ability to understand each balance is necessary. When you view patience, you are responsible for mirroring in your mental understanding patience impatience. When you view impatience, it is necessary for your mental configuration of understanding to be impatience/patience. We use this as a simple example. Most configurations of mind have many facets, and understanding the polarities of your own mind, as well as the polarities of the mind of others, can and must be understood as subtle work. Okay, so now we're extending the process that we just talked about, viewing patience and patience within ourselves and learning to accept that both exist. Now we're extending that to others. We see someone being impatient, and this doesn't mean that, right, like, oh, I see this person being patient, I'm going to be impatient, just, just to be the mirroring effect. That's not what Ra is saying. They're just saying that within the mind, you view someone being impatient and you go, oh, okay, there's impatience. But patience is also there as well. It may not be, it's not the thing being manifested currently, but it's also there. We see someone being afraid or being angry or aggressive in some way. We can go, okay, that's what's happening now. The opposite of that would be love, acceptance, kindness, and a gentle touch, right? So it's just being able to look at one thing, see the thing, acknowledge, accept the thing, and then know in the mind that there's an opposite to that, and that all of that exists within me and all of that exists within the other person. Okay. The next step is the acceptance of the mental polarities of others, which mirrors the second step. So again, we're just accepting what is. We learn to accept what is within ourselves. We can then start accepting what is within others with no desire to hide, no judgment, no avoidance, no aversion. Things just are what they are. Okay. And these are the first four steps of learning mental discipline. The fifth step involves observing the geographical and geometrical relationships and ratios of the mind, the other mind, the mass mind, and the infinite mind. Now, I will say that I don't know what they're talking about, in that I don't have any experience of this. And so this would be much further along in the mental training process, the process of balancing and healing and knowing the mind. Now, I have done some study of the Kabbalah and I've done some of the rituals from that sort of Western mystical esoteric tradition. The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, the rose cross ritual, the middle pillar ritual. And so those are the tree of life and the Kabbalah and the practice of the rituals that help elucidate the understanding of the tree of mind and the Kabbalah. I believe that those are designed to help understand these geographical and geometrical relationships within the mind. The mass mind is the mind, the racial mind, the mind of humanity, and the infinite mind would be the mind of the Creator. Of course, understanding the mind of the Creator means you've made pure contact with intelligent infinity, the one infinite Creator, and that, of course, also is much later in the healing and balancing process. Okay. Okay, we're moving on to body, training of the body. The second area of learning is the study understanding of the body. It is necessary to know your body well. This is a matter of using the mind to examine how the feelings, the biases, what you would call the emotions, affect various portions of the body complex. It shall be necessary to both understand the bodily polarities and to accept them, repeating in a chemical, physical way the work you have done upon the mind and individual consciousness. The body is a creature of the mind's creation. It has its biases. The biological bias must be first understood, completely understood, and then the opposite bias allowed to find full expression and understanding. Again, the process of acceptance of the body as a balanced as well as polarized individual may then be accomplished. Okay, so note here, the mind is a massive part of understanding and healing the body, right? You're going to use the mind to look at how what happens in the mind affects the body. Okay, so how certain emotions, certain feelings, certain patterns within the mind, what does that create in the body? And that's any sensation in the body, but also physical behavioral patterns, right? Like I've dealt with lots of substance abuse since I was 15, all the way up until recently, and so what was happening in my mind that was causing particular behavioral patterns, I had to look at that. How did those behavioral patterns make me feel in my physical body? right? So this is all part of understanding the body. And what Ra says here, the biological bias that they mentioned here, we're going to get into in these next couple quotes, if that didn't quite make sense. I've pulled quotes where Don was asking specifically about what do you mean by examining sensations and what is the biological bias, and what is using love and wisdom when it comes to bodily understanding and healing. Okay, so we'll go further here. Don asks, would the proper balancing exercises for all the sensations of the body be some form of inactivity, such as meditation or contemplation? Ra says, this is largely incorrect. The balancing requires a meditative state in order for the work to be done. However, the balancing of sensation has to do with an analysis of the sensation with a special respect to any unbalanced leaning between the love and the wisdom or the positive and the negative. Then, whatever is lacking in the balanced sensation is, as in all balancing, allowed to come into the being after the sensation is remembered and recalled in such detail as to overwhelm the senses. It is then the task to extend this understanding to the bodies of others whom you will meet. The simplest example of this is the understanding that each biological male is female, each biological female is male. This is a simple example. However, in almost every case wherein you are attempting the understanding of the body of self or other, you will again find that the most subtle discernment is necessary in order to fully grasp the polarity complexes involved. Okay, so um, all males are female, all females are male. I don't think that Ra is speaking to the current cultural phenomenon of identifying as this gender or that gender or multigender or whatever. What they're saying is every male has a complete female in them. Every female has a complete male in them. And I believe what they're saying is um, males are typically more analytical, more logical, more direct. They're more in their minds, right? They're more active, they're more outward moving. Females are uh, typically more rooted in feeling. They're more intuitive. They go based on what they feel more than what they think, right? So there are masculine and feminine qualities that need to be balanced and able to find expression. Like we've all seen someone who we could say, oh, he's very feminine, or we've seen a woman where we go, oh, she's pretty masculine. She acts like a man, or she behaves more like a male than a female, right? So we can see this in people, and um, I think men have to be able to allow a tender, gentle, compassionate, intuitive, feeling sense of self to grow and to express in order to find their balance. And I think women would need to be more analytical, look at using the mind more and balancing the use of feeling and sense and intuition with the mind, right? So I believe that this is what they're speaking to here. Don then goes on to ask, in the healing exercise concerning the body, what do you mean by the disciplines of the body having to do with the balance between love and wisdom in the use of the body in its natural functions? Ra says the body complex has natural functions. Many of these have to do with the unmanifested self and are normally not subject to the need for balancing. So that is our heart beating, our blood flowing, right? Like our food digesting. We don't have to do anything to that. It's just happening and it's just a natural function of the body. There are natural functions which have to do with others. Among these are touching, loving, the sexual life, and those times when the company of another is craved to combat the type of loneliness which is the natural function of the body, as opposed to those types of loneliness which are of the mind emotion complex or of the spirit. When these natural functions may be observed in the daily life, they may be examined in order that the love of self and the love of other versus the wisdom regarding the use of natural functions may be observed. There are many fantasies and stray thoughts which may be examined in most of your peoples in this balancing process. Equally to be balanced is the withdrawal from the need for these natural functions with regard to others. On the one hand, there is an excess of love. It must be determined whether this love is of self, love of other, or both. On the other hand, there is an overbalance towards wisdom. It is well to know the body complex so that it is an ally, balanced and ready to be clearly used as a tool, for each bodily function may be used in higher and higher, if you will, complexes of energy with others. No matter what the behavior, the important balancing is the understanding of each interaction on this level with others, so that whether the balance may be love wisdom or wisdom love, the other is seen by the self in a balanced configuration, and the self is thus freed for further work. Whew, okay, that's a long one. So let's kind of go over this here. So the love of self versus love of other, the love of self and love of others versus the wisdom regarding the use of natural functions may be observed. So they're talking about, right? Where did they say? Touching, loving, sexual life, and those times when the company of others is craved, right? So how, what how often do I need to be part of the group? Do I require the group to feel safe and secure? Do I require others to feel okay with myself? Is there an overextension of love of others, need of others to feel contained, happy, secure, fulfilled? Um, on the other hand, do I constantly need to use others, manipulate them, and control them and get stuff from them, sort of suck their energy, call them energy vampires? Do I need other people all the time in order to feel okay within myself? So that needs to be examined. On the other hand, which is the one I'm familiar with, that would be the withdrawal from people or groups of people. I certainly have this tendency to isolate, and I much prefer to be alone often, most of the time, rather than be in a group. And as I progress here, I can slowly see that changing. And so that's something that I have to examine when it comes to sex. Do we need sex all the time in order to feel good? Are we using other people for sex? Do we completely avoid sex? Because now, especially for the spiritual seeker, there's a lot of teachings that I believe are totally distorted that say that, sex is debased, it's degraded activity, and it can only lead you further into, the depths of hell, or to the darkest parts of humanity. Sex is how we all got here. So there's nothing wrong with sex. Now, sexual preference and expression can certainly be distorted or undistorted, healthy or unhealthy, balanced or imbalanced, true intimacy or some form of S&M kind of kick. That's all for sure. But do we withdraw from sex because of some idealistic concept that we're trying to achieve? Or are we just comfortable with our sexuality? So these are the things that need to be explored, especially when it comes to self interacting with other selves. Okay. And then it says at the end here, it's well to know the body well so that it can be used as an ally. And Ra says that every bodily function can be used in higher forms of complexes of energy. I would call that higher and higher, more perceptive ways of thinking about what you're doing. So when I eat dinner, I can just set it in front of me and gorge myself on it like a hyena, like a wild animal, or I can sit and I can take the time to give thanks for the meal, sending prayers and blessings to all beings who played a role in this meal coming before me, acknowledging whatever it is I'm about to eat, acknowledging the consciousness that exists within whatever I'm about to eat, and asking that as I merge with this plate of food in front of me, that it be used in service to all, and I can eat in a very polite, loving, grateful manner, right? When I have sex, I can do it in a very aggressive, animalistic way, or I can do it in a very subtle, loving, truly intimate way, right? So everything that the body can do um, can be thought of in higher and higher ways, more sort of, let's say, beautiful, fulfilling, love filled, wisdom filled ways of doing those things. I often do this, and I'm learning to do it more over the last few years with showering, taking a shower. Like I could just stand under the water, not think about it, want to stand in there for 30 minutes because it feels good. or I can, I've learned to, I take cold showers, so in the morning at least, so I'm not in there for very long. But I say to myself, may this water, this expression of water washing over me, purify my mind, my emotions, my body, my spirit of anything that I don't need, of anything that may be inhibiting me from knowing myself better today than I did yesterday, right? So intention behind action allows for more and more higher expressions of any kind of bodily activity. Okay. Let's see. Next, this is the last one for the body. Don asks, when you say examine the sensations of the body, do you mean those sensations available to the body via the five senses or in relation to the natural functions of the body, such as touching, loving, sexual sharing, and company? Or are you speaking of something else altogether? Ra says, the questioner may perceive its body complex at this moment. It is experiencing sensations. Most of these most of these sensations, or in this case, nearly all of them, are transient and without interest. However, the body is the creature of the mind. Certain sensations carry importance due to the charge or power which is felt by the mind upon the experience of this sensation. For instance, at this time, one sensation is carrying a powerful charge for you, that's dawn, and may be examined. This is the sensation of what you would call discomfort due to the cramped position of the body complex during this working. In balancing, you would then explore this sensation. Why is this sensation powerful? Because it was chosen by dawn in order that you might be of service to others in energizing this contact. Each sensation that leaves the aftertaste of meaning upon the mind, that leaves the taste within the memory, shall be examined. These are the sensations of which we speak. So this is great because, if people are carrying a lot of physical discomfort and pain, it's like, oh my God, why does my back hurt so much? Yeah, why does your back hurt so much? That's what Ra is asking us to do. Anything that's happening in the body that the mind notices and goes, oh, what is that? Or what's going on here? That can be examined. And I think what most people lack is what Ra mentioned. The first thing is like, okay, what's happening in the mind that is causing this to happen? What part of my experience in mind, body, spirit, experience with self and other, or lack of experience with self and other, what is causing me to feel in my body the way that I feel right now? That's a big part of the balancing process. And it's funny because I laughed at this part when Ra said, Don, your legs are cramped and you obviously feel the sensation pretty powerfully. Why was it chosen? Because that discomfort energized the contact with Ra, right? He was willing to sacrifice his personal comfort levels in order that it would lead to service to others. And it's this weird thing. Whenever I teach, I'm sitting on the floor. I don't have the most flexible physical body. I'm working on it, but for some reason, I could feel totally fine until I sit down to teach, and then all of a sudden, my hips are kind of tight and my back is tight, and I just say to myself, okay, this is how I'm energizing this service to others. Because if I think about it, what I could do is I could go, oh, you know what? Sitting down here and doing this is making my back hurt, so I'm not going to do it, right? I could give up and I could just leave the physical pain and discomfort behind, but then I would also be leaving the opportunity for being of service to others behind. So I always found that part interesting. Okay, moving on to the spirit, the third part of this. Ra says the third area of learning, learning slash training rather, is the spiritual complex composed of fields of force and consciousness, which are the least distorted of yourself, the mind body spirit complex. The exploration and balancing of the spirit complex is indeed the longest and most subtle part of your learning. We have considered the mind as a tree. The mind controls the body. With the mind single pointed, balanced, and aware, the body comfortable in whatever biases and distortions make it appropriately balanced for that instrument, the instrument is then ready to proceed with the great work. That is the work of wind and fire. The spiritual body energy field is a pathway or channel. When body and mind are receptive and open, then the spirit can become a functioning shuttle or communicator from one, the entity's individual energy of will upwards, and 2, from the streamings of the creative fire and wind downwards. Okay, so the spiritual complex is an energy field. It's a field of force, of energy and consciousness. Okay, now the spiritual body energy field is a pathway. It's a link from the individual consciousness to the infinite consciousness of the one infinite creator. That is what the spirit is. It's a pathway. It's a road from the self to the infinite self, individual self to infinite self, and back down again. And that can only happen when the mind is open. The mind knows itself to a relatively clear degree. It accepts itself to a relatively clear degree. The body is balanced. And again, body balance will be different for everyone. We all are unique. And so it doesn't mean that we're all supposed to behave exactly the same, but we need to explore the ways in which we move and don't move physically that may or may not be out of balance. Of course, this has to do with the basics of the physical energy. That is, diet, exercise, um, healthy sleep patterns, right? All these things allow the mind to feel more relaxed, more stable, more energized. And for sure, taking care of the body allows the mind to do the mental work to further and further degrees or more intensely, right? So you work on the mind, you balance the mind, you work on the body, you balance the body. When those two are relatively balanced, the spirit channel can be opened. Okay. Don says the healing ability, like all other, what this instrument would call paranormal abilities, is affected by the opening of a pathway or shuttle into intelligent infinity, what I just said. There are many upon your plane who have a random hole or gateway in their spirit energy field, sometimes created by the ingestion of chemicals such as what this instrument would call LSD, who are able, randomly and without control, to tap into energy sources. They may or may not be entities who wish to serve. The purpose of carefully and consciously opening this channel is to serve in a more dependable way, in a more commonplace or usual way, in the personal experience of the healer or seeker for that matter. To others, there may appear to be miracles. To the one who has carefully opened the door to intelligent infinity, this is ordinary. This is commonplace. This is as it should be. The life experience becomes somewhat transformed and the great work goes on. Okay, so when we consciously seek the opening of the gateway and the activation of the spirit channel, this is what it means to do healing work. And we'll find later on that Ra says, opening the gateway to intelligent infinity, making contact with the one infinite creator, is to make contact with pure, undistorted light. That light can then be absorbed to heal the self, and then it can be radiated to create environments and opportunities for others to heal themselves. So, really, it's an apprehension of love and light that occurs when the spirit channel is opened. And the healer, a healer, will do these practices on themselves. They'll do the self healing so that when the time comes and the opportunity presents itself to offer the opportunity for another to do their self healing, that we can do that, right? We can open the channel, the energy comes through relatively purely. We share it. We realize that we're not doing it ourselves. We're just offering the space and the opportunity. And it isn't our light that's doing anything. It's not us that's doing anything. It's the energy of the one infinite creator being moving through us as the channel to another individual. Okay. And so that's it for this one. This is the healing. This is working with the mind, the body, and the spirits. And as we get into the chakras, we will see that keeping these kinds of things in mind are very helpful when going through the chakras, because the chakras are located, they have certain kind of locations within the energy field, the electromagnetic field. They're not physically located in the body, of course, but they're related to particular locations within the body. And any discomfort or any pain or trouble in certain parts of the body indicates issues with particular chakras. And once we learn about the qualities and the characteristics and the sort of functions related, the functions of mind, body, and spirit related to each chakra, then we can start to place the issues that we have within the particular chakras. And then we know where we need to look and we need to focus. So I thought this was good before we got into the chakras, which let's see here, which we will do next. Okay, thank you very much for being here. See you next time.